You're standing on the deck of a Japanese aircraft carrier in early 1942. The wind is sharp. The salt stings your face. You're a naval aviator and you've just returned from Pearl Harbor. Your country is celebrating. The Emperor's forces have struck the sleeping giant. The newspapers call it a miracle. Your commanders call it victory, but you know something they don't. You saw the harbor. You saw the ships burning. You counted them. Battleships twisted in the water. Oil fires spreading like black flowers. And yet, even as you pulled away from the smoke, something bothered you. Something you couldn't name at first. It was only later, when you were back on the carrier, that you understood. The American carriers weren't there. You mentioned this to your commanding officer. He waves his hand. He says the carriers are scattered. He says they're weak. He says Japan has struck a blow that will take America years to recover from. You want to believe him. You need to believe him. But deep in your chest, there's a knot. A question you're not allowed to ask. What if we didn't hurt them enough? Weeks pass. You're sent on reconnaissance missions. You fly over the Pacific. You see American islands. You see bases being built. You see airstrips carved into jungle. You see ships moving. More ships than you expected. More ships than anyone expected. You take photographs. You bring them back. You watch the intelligence officers study them in silence. No one talks about what the photographs show. You're told to fly again. This time, you're part of a strike force heading toward Midway. Your orders are clear. Destroy the American fleet. Secure the Pacific. Finish what Pearl Harbor started. You believe in your mission. You believe in your training. You believe in your country. But then you see them. The American carriers appear on the horizon. Not one, not two, three. You realize they were waiting. They knew you were coming. Your formation tightens. You prepare to attack. But then you see something else. American fighters rising from the decks. More than you've ever seen. They come at you like a swarm, fast, aggressive, coordinated. Your bomber is hit. You watch 3 of your wingmen spiral into the sea. You pull back. You try to regroup. But the Americans keep coming. You see your own carriers below. You see bombs falling on them. You see fire spreading across the decks. You see men jumping into the water. You barely make it back to the carrier. When you land, the deck is chaos. Fires are being fought. Wounded men are being carried below. You climb out of your cockpit. Your hands are shaking. An officer grabs you. He asks what you saw. You tell him the truth. You tell him the Americans were ready. You tell him they had more planes than intelligence reported. You tell him they fought like they'd been planning this for months. He tells you to keep your mouth shut. That night, you sit in the crew quarters. You stare at the ceiling. You think about the photographs you took weeks ago. The bases, the ships, the airstrips. You think about how quickly they appeared. You think about how fast America's moving. You think about something you've never thought before. What if we can't win this? The thought terrifies you. You push it away. You tell yourself it's exhaustion. You tell yourself it's fear. You tell yourself Japan is strong. You tell yourself the Emperor is divine. You tell yourself the Americans are soft. You tell yourself all the things you've been taught since childhood. But the thought comes back. Months pass. You're reassigned. You're no longer flying missions. You're now working in intelligence. You're analyzing photographs. American photographs. Captured documents. Intercepted communications. Your job is to assess the enemy's strength. Your job is to help Japan plan its next move. Your job is to see the truth. And the truth is impossible. You're sitting in a small office in Tokyo. There are photographs spread across your desk. They were taken by a reconnaissance plane that flew over the American West Coast. The plane never returned, but it transmitted the images before it was shot down. You're looking at those images now. You see factories, dozens of them, hundreds of them, stretching across the landscape like a metal forest. You see smokestacks. You see rail lines. You see ships being built, not one at a time, not slowly, but in rows, in assembly lines, like they're making toys. You pick up a magnifying glass. You lean closer. You see a shipyard in California. You count the vessels under construction. You count 23 ships. In one yard, you cross-reference with intelligence reports from 3 months ago. That same yard had 8 ships under construction. In 3 months, they built 15 ships and started 8 more. You sit back. You light a cigarette. You do the math. If one shipyard can do this, how many shipyards do they have? You pull out a map. You mark every known American shipyard. You count them. 37 major shipyards. You multiply. You estimate. You realize something that makes your stomach turn. America can build ships faster than Japan can sink them. You write this in your report. You're careful with your words. You don't want to sound defeatist. You don't want to sound like you've lost faith, but you include the numbers. You include the photographs. You include the facts. You submit the report to your superior. It comes back to you 3 days later. There's a note attached. It says your analysis is flawed. It says you've overestimated American capacity. It says you've underestimated Japanese spirit. It says you should revise your conclusions. You don't revise them. You file the report. You keep working. You keep analyzing photographs. And the photographs keep coming. And they keep showing the same thing. America is building. You see photographs of airfields in the continental United States. You count the planes. You see hundreds lined up, fighters, bombers, transports. You see new models. Models you've never seen before. Models your intelligence files don't have. You see them being produced in vast hangars. You see them being tested. You see them being shipped overseas. You see photographs of factories in Detroit. You read the captions. They say these factories used to make cars. Now they make tanks. You see assembly lines. You see workers. Thousands of them. You see tanks rolling off the line. One every hour. One every 30 minutes. The numbers are staggering. You check them twice. You check them 3 times. They're accurate. You see photographs of American soldiers training. Camps spread across the country. Tens of thousands of men. Hundreds of thousands. You read intercepted reports. The Americans are drafting millions. They're training them. They're equipping them. They're preparing them for war. You wonder where all the equipment is coming from. You wonder how one country can produce so much. You wonder if the photographs are fake. You wonder if this is some kind of American propaganda, some kind of trick. But the photographs are real. You've verified them. You've cross-checked them. You've compared them with other intelligence sources. They're real. You're called into a meeting. Senior officers are there. They want to discuss American production capacity. They want to know how Japan can counter it. They ask you to present your findings. You stand. You show the photographs. You explain the numbers. You explain what the Americans are doing. One officer interrupts you. He says the numbers are impossible. He says no country can build that fast. He says your sources must be wrong. He says you're spreading fear. You show him the photographs again. You show him the shipyards. You show him the factories. You show him the airfields. You explain that every piece of intelligence confirms this. You explain that this isn't fear. This is fact. He stands up. He walks out. Half the room follows him. You're left standing there. You're holding photographs that no one wants to see. You're holding truth that no one wants to believe. You sit down. You gather the photographs. You put them back in the folder. You walk back to your office. You think about something your father told you when you were young. He said the strongest man isn't the one who never falls. It's the one who sees the cliff and stops walking. Japan isn't stopping. You keep working. You keep analyzing. You keep filing reports. And you keep seeing the same thing. America isn't just building ships and planes. They're building a system that turns raw materials into weapons faster than you thought possible. A system that trains soldiers faster than Japan can recruit them. A system that moves supplies across oceans faster than Japan can intercept them. You see photographs of American supply convoys. Dozens of ships, hundreds of ships, protected by destroyers, protected by aircraft, moving across the Pacific, moving toward bases, moving toward the front lines. You calculate the tonnage. You calculate the speed. You realize something. America isn't fighting a war. They're operating a machine. You're given a new assignment. You're told to analyze American morale. You're told to find weaknesses. You're told to identify cracks in their resolve. You're given access to captured documents. Letters from American soldiers, newspapers, propaganda posters. You read them all. You're looking for despair. You're looking for doubt. You're looking for signs that America is tiring. You're looking for evidence that they want to go home. You're looking for proof that Japan can outlast them. You don't find it. Instead, you find something else. You find anger. You find determination. You find letters from soldiers who talk about finishing the job. You find newspapers that print casualty numbers and then print factory production numbers right below them. You find posters that don't hide the cost of war. They embrace it. They say, this is what it takes to win. You find a letter from an American factory worker. She writes to her son overseas. She tells him she's working double shifts. She tells him she's building bombers. She tells him every rivet she puts in is a promise that he'll come home. She tells him America won't stop until it's over. You put the letter down. You stare at the wall. You think about Japanese factory workers. You think about how many are hungry, how many are exhausted, how many are working with old equipment and scarce materials. You think about how different this letter sounds. You think about how this woman believes you're sent to inspect a Japanese factory. It's producing aircraft engines. You arrive early in the morning. The manager greets you. He shows you around. He's proud of the facility. He tells you they're working around the clock. He tells you they're producing 50 engines a month. You nod. You take notes. You watch the workers. They're skilled. They're dedicated. They're doing everything they can. But you notice something. You notice the tools are old. You notice the materials are limited. You notice the engines are being assembled by hand, piece by piece, carefully, slowly. You think about the American photographs. You think about the assembly lines. You think about the machines building machines. You think about 50 engines a month. You think about what America produces in the same time. You thank the manager. You leave. You sit in your car. You light a cigarette. You don't write a report about this visit. There's nothing to report. Everyone already knows. No one wants to say it. Japan is trying. America is succeeding. You're back in your office. It's late at night. You're alone. You're looking at a map of the Pacific. You're marking Japanese positions. You're marking American positions. You're drawing lines, supply routes, attack vectors, strategic points. You're trying to see a way forward. You're trying to see how Japan can win. You can't see it. You see American forces advancing, slowly, steadily, island by island. You see Japanese defenses holding, for a while, but then you see them collapse. You see them retreat. You see them lose ground. You see the pattern. You see the inevitability. You lean back in your chair. You close your eyes. You think about your brother. He's a soldier. He's stationed on an island in the South Pacific. He writes to you sometimes. His letters are always optimistic. He always says they're ready. He always says they'll fight to the end. You believe him. You know he will. But you also know what's coming. You've seen the photographs. You've seen the ships. You've seen the planes. You've seen the numbers. You know your brother is standing in front of a wave that doesn't stop, a wave that doesn't tire, a wave that keeps coming no matter how many times you push it back. You open your eyes. You look at the map again. You think about sending your brother a letter. You think about telling him the truth. You think about telling him what you've seen. You think about warning him, but you don't, you can't. What would you even say? You put the map away. You go home. You don't sleep, the war continues. You continue your work. You continue analyzing photographs. You continue filing reports. You continue watching Japan lose ground. You continue seeing the American machine move forward. You continue doing your job even though you know what the job is really about now. You're documenting a defeat. You see photographs of American soldiers landing on beaches. You see the scale of the operations. You see the ships offshore. You see the planes overhead. You see the coordination. You see the firepower. You see the logistics. You see how they move thousands of men and tons of equipment across an ocean and put them exactly where they need to be. You compare this to Japanese operations. You think about how Japan struggles to supply its own troops, how ships are sunk, how supplies are scarce, how soldiers are starving on islands, how the empire is stretching thin, how the distances are too great, how the resources are too few. You see photographs of American bombers, flying in formation, hundreds of them. You read reports of raids on Japanese cities. You read about the damage. You read about the fires. You read about the casualties. You read about how the bombers come back, again and again. You read about how there's nothing Japan can do to stop them. You think about the pilots, the Japanese pilots, the ones who try to intercept the bombers. You think about how brave they are. You think about how skilled they are. You think about how few of them there are. You think about how they're facing an enemy that can afford to lose planes and still keep coming. You think about how courage isn't enough. You're called into another meeting. This time it's different. This time the officers are quiet. This time they're listening. They want your honest assessment. They want to know what Japan is facing. They want to know if there's a path to victory. You stand. You tell them the truth. You tell them about the factories. You tell them about the ships. You tell them about the planes. You tell them about the supply lines. You tell them about the soldiers. You tell them about the system. You tell them America is producing more in a month than Japan produces in a year. You tell them Japan cannot win a war of attrition. The room is silent. An older officer speaks. He asks if Japan should surrender. You don't answer. That's not your place. That's not your decision. You're just an analyst. You're just someone who looks at photographs and counts ships. You sit down. The meeting ends. No one looks at you. No one says thank you. You gather your papers. You leave. You walk through the halls. You pass soldiers. Young soldiers, teenagers. You wonder if they know. You wonder if anyone has told them the truth. You wonder if truth even matters anymore. You're at your desk again. You're looking at a new set of photographs. These were taken by a submarine. A Japanese submarine that got close to the American coast. Close enough to see the ports. Close enough to see the activity. Close enough to take pictures. You see ships, dozens of them, waiting to cross the Pacific. You see cargo being loaded, tanks, trucks, supplies. You see trains arriving. You see cranes moving. You see workers everywhere. You see a system that never sleeps. You see one photograph that stops you. It's a shipyard at night. The lights are on. The work continues. You can see tiny figures moving. You can see sparks from welding. You can see the outline of a ship under construction. You realize this is happening 24 hours a day. You realize this is happening in every American shipyard. You realize this never stops. You put the photograph down. You think about Japanese shipyards. You think about how they work during the day, how they stop at night to conserve electricity, how they ration materials, how they struggle to keep pace. You think about the gap. The enormous unbridgeable gap between what Japan can do and what America is doing. You think about something you read once, a quote from an American admiral. He said, "The American economy is like a sleeping dragon. It moves slowly at first, but once it wakes up, nothing can stop it." You didn't believe it when you read it. You believe it now. You're given access to interrogation reports, reports from captured American soldiers. You read them. You're looking for information. You're looking for morale issues. You're looking for weaknesses. You read dozens of reports. You find something surprising. The American soldiers are confident, not arrogant, not boastful, just confident. They believe they're going to win. They believe their country is stronger. They believe their equipment is better. They believe their cause is just. They don't doubt. They don't waver. They just believe. You compare this to Japanese soldiers. You think about the propaganda. You think about the speeches. You think about the promises. You think about how Japan tells its soldiers they're fighting for the emperor, for honor, for glory. You think about how Japan tells its soldiers to never surrender, to die before being captured, to embrace death. You think about how different that is from believing you're going to win. You're walking home one evening. It's late. The streets are dark. There's a blackout. American bombers have been spotted. Air raid sirens are silent for now, but everyone is ready. You walk past a school. You see children inside. They're being trained. They're being taught how to fight, how to use bamboo spears, how to resist an invasion. You stop. You watch them. They're so young. 10 years old, 12 years old. They're practicing thrusts. They're shouting. They're serious. They believe they can stop American soldiers with bamboo spears. You turn away. You keep walking. You feel something you haven't felt in a long time. You feel anger. Not at America. Not at the Americans. But at your own country. At the leaders who let it get this far. At the generals who ignored the truth. At the politicians who believed their own propaganda. At the men who sent children to train with bamboo spears. You're back in your office. You receive a new intelligence report. It's about a weapon, a new American weapon, something unprecedented. The report is vague. It talks about a single bomb that destroyed an entire city. It talks about a flash of light. It talks about tens of thousands dead in an instant. You read the report twice. You think it's a mistake. You think it's exaggerated. You think it's impossible. But then you see the photographs. Photographs of Hiroshima. You see the devastation. You see the complete and total destruction. You see the scale. You see what one bomb did. You sit in silence. You stare at the photographs. You try to understand. You try to comprehend. You can't. Your mind can't process it. One bomb, one plane, one moment. An entire city gone. You read another report. It says America has more of these bombs. It says they'll use them again if Japan doesn't surrender. You believe them. You know they will. You've been watching America for years now. You've been analyzing their capacity. You've been tracking their determination. You know they won't stop. You know Japan can't survive this. 3 days later, another report. Another city, Nagasaki, another bomb. Another flash. Another city destroyed. You don't look at the photographs this time. You don't need to. You know what they show. You put the report in a folder. You close the folder. You put it in a drawer. You walk to the window. You look out at Tokyo. You see people moving. You see life continuing. You wonder how many days this city has left. You wonder if America will drop a bomb here next. You wonder if you'll see the flash. You wonder if you'll have time to think about it. You wonder if it matters. The emperor speaks. You hear his voice on the radio. It's the first time you've ever heard him. His voice is thin, distant. He's saying Japan must endure the unendurable. He's saying Japan must bear the unbearable. He's saying the war is over. You sit down. You're still in your office. You're surrounded by photographs. Photographs of American factories. Photographs of American ships. Photographs of American planes. Photographs of American soldiers. Photographs of American cities at night, lit up and working while Japanese cities went dark. Photographs of the truth you've been looking at for years. You think about all the reports you filed, all the warnings you gave, all the numbers you showed. You think about how no one wanted to listen. You think about how everyone wanted to believe Japan could win through spirit, through courage, through sacrifice. You think about how none of that was enough. You stand up. You start gathering the photographs. You start organizing them. You're not sure why. Maybe you think someone will want to see them someday. Maybe you think someone needs to understand what happened. Maybe you just need to do something with your hands. You find the first photograph you ever analyzed, the one from Pearl Harbor, the one that showed the burning ships. You look at it now. You see it differently. You don't see victory. You see the moment Japan woke the dragon. You see the moment everything became inevitable. You put the photograph on top of the pile. You look at it one more time. You think about the pilots who flew that mission. You wonder how many of them are still alive. You wonder if they ever realized what they'd started. You wonder if they ever saw the photographs you saw. The photographs of what America built in response. You wonder if they ever knew they couldn't win. You leave your office. You walk through the building. It's empty. Most people have left. Most people are home. Most people are trying to understand what surrender means. You walk outside. The sun is setting. The sky is orange and red. You light a cigarette. You smoke it slowly. You think about your brother. You haven't heard from him in months. You don't know if he's alive. You don't know if he survived. You don't know if he'll ever come home. You think about all the brothers, all the sons, all the fathers, all the men who died fighting a war that you knew was lost years ago. You think about the Americans. You think about how they won, not through spirit, not through courage, not through sacrifice. They won through steel, through factories, through organization, through the simple, brutal mathematics of production. They won because they could build faster than Japan could destroy. They won because they turned their entire country into a weapon. You think about the photographs, the ones of American workers, the ones of women building bombers, the ones of factories running day and night, the ones of shipyards producing vessels and assembly lines. You think about how every single person you saw in those photographs was part of something bigger, part of a system, part of a machine that crushed Japan. You finish your cigarette. You drop it. You step on it. You look up at the sky. You think about tomorrow. You think about what happens next. You think about occupation. You think about rebuilding. You think about learning to live in a world where Japan isn't an empire, where Japan is defeated, where Japan is occupied by the very country whose strength you've been documenting for years. You think about how everyone will be surprised by what America does next. But you won't be. You've seen the photographs. You know who they are. You know what they're capable of. You know they'll rebuild Japan the same way they built their war machine. Efficiently, systematically, overwhelmingly. You turn to go home. You take one last look at the building. At the office where you spent years analyzing the truth no one wanted to believe. You wonder if anyone will ever read your reports. You wonder if anyone will ever care. You wonder if history will remember that someone tried to warn them. You start walking. The streets are quiet. The war is over. Japan has lost. And you, the analyst who saw it coming, are left with photographs and memories and the certain knowledge that courage alone was never going to be enough. Not against a country that turned itself into a factory. Not against a country that could build a ship in the time it took Japan to build an engine. Not against a country that dropped the sun on 2 cities and had more waiting. You keep walking. You go home. You'll wake up tomorrow in a defeated nation. You'll live the rest of your life knowing you saw the truth before anyone else. You'll carry that weight. That knowledge, that burden. The war is over. But the photographs remain, silent witnesses to the moment Japan realized it was facing something it couldn't defeat. Not with courage. Not with honor. Not with sacrifice. Something bigger than all of that, something unstoppable. You reach your home. You open the door. You step inside. You close the door behind you. And in the darkness, you finally let yourself think the thought you've been avoiding for years. We never had a chance. The American machine was always going to win. The photographs proved it. The numbers proved it. The factories proved it. The ships proved it. The planes proved it. The bombs proved it. Everything proved it. You just had to be willing to see. And now in the silence of defeat, you realize something else. Something that will haunt you for the rest of your life. It's not just that Japan lost. It's that Japan lost to an idea. The idea that a country could turn every citizen into a soldier without them ever holding a gun. The idea that a factory worker could defeat an empire. The idea that logistics could triumph over courage. The idea that war isn't won by the bravest. It's won by the strongest. And strength isn't just about warriors. It's about shipyards. It's about assembly lines. It's about a country that never stops building. You sit down. You're tired. You're more tired than you've ever been. You close your eyes. You see the photographs. You'll always see the photographs. They're burned into your mind. Images of American power that Japan tried to ignore, tried to dismiss, tried to defeat. Images of the truth. You think about the young pilots at Pearl Harbor. You think about how they celebrated. You think about how they thought they'd won. You think about how wrong they were. You think about how that attack didn't cripple America. It woke them up. It focused them. It gave them a purpose. And once America had a purpose, once America turned its full attention to war, once America transformed itself from a sleeping nation into an industrial weapon, there was only one possible outcome. The outcome you documented. The outcome you predicted. The outcome no one wanted to believe. Japan's defeat. You open your eyes. You're still sitting in your home. The war is over. The photographs are filed away. The reports are archived. The truth is no longer secret. Everyone knows now. Everyone understands. Japan fought America and lost. Not because Japanese soldiers weren't brave. Not because Japanese tactics weren't sound. Not because Japanese spirit wasn't strong, but because America was bigger, faster, stronger, more organized, more efficient, more relentless, because America was a machine. And Japan was just a country. You stand up. You walk to the window. You look out at the night. Somewhere out there, American forces are arriving. American ships are docking. American soldiers are preparing to occupy. And somewhere in America, factories are still running, still building, still producing, because that's what they do. That's who they are. That's what the photographs taught you. America doesn't stop. You turn away from the window. You'll face tomorrow when it comes. You'll face the occupation. You'll face the rebuilding. You'll face the new world. But tonight you'll remember. You'll remember the photographs. You'll remember the truth they revealed. You'll remember the lesson you learned. Never wake the dragon. Never underestimate the quiet power of factories running through the night. Never assume courage is enough. You sit back down. You close your eyes again. And in the darkness you finally let go. You let go of the anger. You let go of the frustration. You let go of the burden of being the one who knew. Because it doesn't matter anymore. The war is over. Japan has lost. The photographs were right. They were always right. And somewhere in America, someone is probably taking a photograph right now. A photograph of a factory. A photograph of a ship. A photograph of progress. A photograph that shows what happens when a nation decides to build instead of destroy. A photograph that proves one simple truth. Industrial power wins wars. Not courage. Not honor. Not sacrifice, steel, ships, planes, bombs, production, logistics, systems, machines. That's what wins. That's what always wins. That's what the photographs showed you. That's what Japan refused to see until it was too late. You breathe slowly. The night is quiet. The war is over. And you, the analyst who saw America's secret strength before anyone else, who tried to warn them, who documented the inevitable, you're left with one final thought. Subscribe for more hidden WWII stories.